Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about standard form as a way of writing linear equations, and our focus today is actually on the graphing. So how do I graph an equation written in standard form? Please take a few minutes to set up your notes. You can pause and resume when you're ready. So our warm-up for today is on last week's topic on finding the slope. So for number one, please find the slope of the line containing those 2 points. And number two, find the slope from the data in the table. Pause the video, resume when you're ready. All right, in the first one, we're working with a graph. So just a reminder that slope, or M, is rise over run. So what we're trying to do is go from point to point. Your rise is your vertical change. The run is the horizontal change. Here it looks like we're counting by ones in both the X and the Y axes. So we can just count spaces, or we can use the numbers, either way. So if we want to count the rise first, we want to use the Y values. So we're starting at 11, we're going up to 17. That's an increase of 6, because 17 minus 11 is 6. For the run, we're going across, we're using the X values. We started at 2, and it looks like we're going all the way over the 6. So from 2 to 6 is an increase of 4. So the rise was 6 and the run was 4. We always want to make sure that we are reducing our slopes, just as we would reducing fractions, and we should get a final answer of 3 over 2, 3/2. For number 2, we need to use the slope formula, which remember is the y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. And you can choose any ordered pairs from our table as long as you choose 2 x's and y's that match up. And as a little hint on this one, if we're going to subtract y values that have decimals involved, it's going to be nice if we can choose the y values that have the same ending decimals, like the 0.75s. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the 2 ordered pairs that are still left on the screen to calculate my slope. So I'm going to subtract my y values. Remember, y sub 2 means the second y value. So it's going to be 8.75 minus my first y value, 3.75. In the denominator, subtract the second x value minus the first x value. And when I do this, I get 5 as my rise and 4 as my run. 5/4. So let's take a look at today's lesson. How do I graph an equation written in standard form? We need to start by talking about what standard form actually is. So the standard form of an equation looks like this. ax plus by equals c, where a, b, and c are real numbers, and a and b cannot both be 0. So some examples of a standard form of an equation might include 3x plus 2y equals 4. Or negative x plus 5y equals 6. Or even 1.2x minus 0.6y equals 71. They're still real numbers. As long as the x and the y are both on the left-hand side of the equal sign, it's considered standard form. Notice the x and the y are both on the left-hand side. So here's how we graph. So your question or main idea will be the steps for graphing. How to graph. So take a minute to copy these 3 steps down. You can pause your video and resume when you're ready. All right, so step 1 says to find and plot the x-intercept. Step 2, find and plot the y-intercept. And step 3, draw a line through the 2 intercepts. So basically, we're going to end up finding the x-intercept and plotting it on the x-axis. Say it ends up being right there, which I think is 7 or around there. The y-intercept, again, I'm kind of making these numbers up, but let's say the y-intercept is 5. I put a dot right at 5 on the y-axis. And then step 3, I just draw a line through my 2 points to indicate all of the possible solutions to the equation. We just happen to find 2 of them, one at the x-intercept and one at the y-intercept. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go through this example with you. And it says to graph 2x plus 4y equals 12. Now notice when we talked about the x-intercept, it said x comma 0. Okay, any ordered pair on the x-axis, if we use not just the value, the number, it would be the ordered pair where it's the x value because it's moved left or right from the origin, but the y-coordinate is always 0. For example, on the left-hand side, it could be -4 comma 0. But that y-coordinate is always, always, always going to be 0. So what we can do is we can think about, well, what if this y was 0? Well, 4 times 0 is just 0, essentially canceling that out. So what we're going to do is we use this thing called the cover-up method. And I have this rectangular box, but you could really use the end of your pencil, your pinky. You could use, tear off a little sheet of paper. All we're going to do is we're going to say, all right, if y is 0, that 4y is gone. It's not even there. So all I have left is this equation, 2x equals 12. Well, that's an equation with one variable, which we can solve. We just use division. X equals 6. So when y equaled 0, x equaled 6. In other words, 6 comma 0 is the x-intercept. I could then plot that on my graph by going to the right 6 units, and I don't go up or down at all because my y-coordinate is 0. That makes it right on the x-axis. Now, if I want to find the y-intercept, basically do the exact opposite. I say, okay, that means x has to be 0 because any ordered pair on the y-axis, I don't go left or right, meaning the x-coordinate must be 0. I say, all right, well, if the x-coordinate is 0, 2 times 0 is 0, that's gone. Now I solve what's left. 4y equals 12. So it looks like I'm going to have to divide by 4 to get y by itself, and I get y equals 3. So when x was 0, y was 3. That's one solution to this equation. I can then plot that y-intercept on the y-axis at 0, 3. I now have 2 points, and from last year in geometry, hopefully remember that you can make a line with any 2 points. Just remember to put arrows at the end. And that's how we graph a standard form equation using the intercepts. If you need to, pause the video to copy any of this down. Let's take a look at another example. This time we're just going to find the intercepts. We're not going to worry about actually graphing. If I want to find the x-intercept, I cover up the y, and I solve the remaining equation. -4x equals 20. I use division to solve, and I get x equals -5. So my intercept, again, we're thinking about my numbers, the x-coordinate, which always goes first, was -5, and that was because my y-coordinate was 0. If I want to find my y-intercept, I just slide my box over using the cover-up method, and I solve what's left. -y equals 20. Well, remember, -y is really -1 times y. So if I want to solve this for y, I divide both sides by -1, and I get y equals -20. So as an ordered pair, remember x goes first. X must have been 0 because I covered it up, and I got a y-coordinate of -20. So there are my 2 intercepts. Feel free to pause this to copy any of it down. All right, our third example, this time we're going to find the intercepts and graph. So we have x minus 3y equals 9. Let's start with the x-intercept. If I want to find the x-intercept, I cover up the y. In other words, I make it 0. Y is 0. And I want to figure out what the x value would be. Well, it looks like x is already by itself when I do that. It's just 9. If I want to find the y-intercept, I move my cover-up box over. I make sure that I don't just cover up, I only uncover 3y. I use that symbol as well. It's technically negative 3y there. So my equation is negative 3y equals 9, because x was 0. I solved this equation using division. Divide both sides by negative 3 is going to make y equal negative 3. My y-intercept is at the ordered pair 0, negative 3. So I plot my x-intercept at 9, 0. I plot my y-intercept at 0, negative 3. I graph my line by drawing a straight line through the points and extend with arrows. Feel free to pause and copy down this information before moving on to the next example. All right, our last example, we have negative 3x plus 5y equals negative 10. We're going to find the intercepts. We're not going to graph here. Finding the x-intercept, let's cover up the y variable and solve the remaining equation that we can still see. Negative 3x equals negative 10. It looks like we just have to divide once again. Divide by negative 3 on both sides to get x by itself. And when I divide a negative by a negative, I get a positive. And 10 divided by 3 is 3.3 repeating, or 3 1/3. So the x-coordinate was 3.3 repeating when the y-coordinate was 0, because it was covered up. I move my box over, remembering to uncover that symbol, the plus or minus symbol, because that's part of the 5y. And I solve the remaining equation. 5y equals negative 10. I divide by positive 5 on each side. And I get y equals negative 2. So we covered up the x, so that was 0. And we got a y-coordinate of negative 2 as the intercept. All right, I think we're going to stop there for our lesson today. Your assignment is posted in Schoology, listed under the Day 3 assignment. Let me know if you have any questions.